Hello, my name is Hilda Louise Smith CASIN, and my claim for being able to talk with you today is that we are celebrating Macomb's 150th year anniversary. And I live in the part of Macomb that's known as Bergland Town. And why is that so important to everybody and to me? It's because I was born in Bergland Town. In fact, I was born in the 1000 block of Summit Street. The space is now vacant. It's right next door to Mr. Burris's house. If you remember, there's a little cafe up there on the side of Summit Street as you go north, and that's the space where I was delivered by a midwife. I spent my growing up years in Bergland. I attended school in Bergland. In fact, I attended the first school that was built in 1915, and that school was located on St. Augustine Street and Magnolia Street. It was a 3-room frame building. And I know with the buildings that we have today, a lot of people say, well, oh, how in the world could you learn in a 3-room building? Well, we had good teachers at that time, and those teachers were concerned that we had to learn how to read. Very definite you had to read. You had to learn how to do your math, and there was an emphasis on writing. Reading was extremely important to me. It was a place where you could travel, you could get experiences without having to go away from home. And I know for some of you this will certainly be shocking, but in the Bergland community, when I was growing up, there were pigs and chickens and cows and all sorts of things. And the pigs had what was known as a pig pen. For some of you, it was a hog pen. And when the city passed an ordinance that you couldn't have pigs in the community, then the pig pen dried out. And we had one at the rear end of where I live, because at this time now I'm living on Wall Street. And the pig pen was at the end of the lot, and there was a chinaberry tree that was right there with the pig pen. I would get over in the pig pen with my book and climb the chinaberry tree and get on a limb, and I would read. Some of you may not have ever heard of the Bobbsey twins at the seashore and all of the other little travels that children made as you read those stories in that book. And when I got tired of reading, I would watch the clouds as they would make their different formations, and I would travel to different places. Had no earthly idea at that time. We didn't have all the globes and the maps and all of these things that you had in some of these other schools, but it was adventurous knowing that there was somewhere beyond where we were. As time passed, we had a gentleman to come to Macomb, fresh out of Jackson College. At that time it was not a university. His name was Mr. C.D. Higgins. And he looked at the little school that we had, and he decided, wait a minute, we can do better than this. So he went to the city officials and asked if they would do something about the school. They told him they didn't have any money. 3 rooms were added to the school, and Mr. Higgins and his PTA group had a strong PTA. Parents wanted their children to get a good education. And they worked with Mr. Higgins as he looked around across the nation to see, was there anybody who could help people here in Macomb do something about the education of the black children? And there was an organization, the WPA, and this group had money that could be given to areas where there was a need for improving the educational activities of the students. And Mr. Higgins was able to get that WPA money and had a brick building built on St. Augustine Street. I entered that building in the grades, and I graduated from that building in 1948. That was the first brick building that we had, and it was under Mr. Higgins' leadership along with that strong PTA group that he had. And the man was so interested in the education of the children, and his commitment to education and his commitment to us was, skin color has nothing to do with your brain. Use your brain. Learn all of the things that you need to learn that will help you advance in the world. And as a result of his pushing and his pulling and his going outside looking for things to help us, he was able to get money to build another school. And that was Bergman High School on Elmwood Street. That's the school that's now known as Higgins Middle School, because as they've made transformations, it went from Mr. Higgins to W.L. Tobias, who was the last principal that we had. I talk about education because getting a foundation is critical. Before we really had a formal school here in Bergman, our Sunday school teachers worked with us as children. We had little cards that they used in the class, teeny-weeny cards. And those cards would teach us about Jesus, teach us about the Lord, how the world was formed, all those kinds of things. But we had to read. Everybody learned how to read his little card. And then eventually we got to the place where we had the little Sunday school books. Now, after I graduated from Bergman High School in 1948, I was fortunate enough to go to a junior college in Edwards, Mississippi. That was a 2-year college. I had a job. I had to get up in the morning and go to the dining hall and, as they called it, wait tables. I was assigned to take the food out to the professors' tables. These were the dignitaries. So you set the table, you put the food on the table. If they needed some bread or some meat or some whatever, you stood in the corner and they would beckon to you, and you would go over and take the plate and take it back to the dining room and get them a refill or whatever it was that they needed. And when they finished eating, you helped clean up the cafeteria, and you would go back to your dorm or to your class. You studied and you got your lesson out, and then at the end of the day you'd go back to do your job. That helped to pay for you to go. I did that for 2 years. After graduating from Southern Christian Institute, this is a sister school to Tougaloo, and it was formed by the Disciples of Christ. This is a white group who had come into Mississippi to assist black people in getting an education. After that, I was fortunate enough to get a job in Wilkinson County. I went to Wilkinson County as a classroom teacher, and I stayed there for 9 years until they consolidated the schools and sent a school. They built the big school down at Woodville, and I went to Woodville and I stayed there for 1 year. And then I was able to get a job in Macomb, because at that time you could apply for a job in Macomb, and I was fortunate enough to get it, and I was assigned to Taggart Elementary School in Summit. And that was a joy, because those were students that I enjoyed, and they are now adults, they are grandparents, they are out with jobs, doing things that just make you proud, because we worked with them. Our school went to 7th grade, and then they came down to Bergman High School and completed their work. Okay, after, during the time that I was over in Wilkerson County, I enrolled at Jackson State College and I received my BS degree in elementary education. And from Jackson College, I enrolled at the University of Mississippi following James Meredith's episodes there. And I was accepted into their program, and I received the Master of Education in Guidance and Counseling. And I went back to Ole Miss and received my degree in Educational Administration. And during the time that I was working with Macomb, we had a lot of interesting activities that they had the teachers involved in, because everything was to see to it that we became the best that we could be in working with other teachers and working with the students. We had the opportunity to go to Stanford University and spend 6 weeks there getting computer science training. And that was a very, very interesting experience, and I certainly enjoyed it. I received a National Science Foundation grant to go to DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana. That's when the country was really into the sciences, being sure that the teachers were properly educated and trained. So I attended that activity. My experiences went from being a classroom teacher to being a principal, and then going down to Macomb Central Office as assistant elementary supervisor. And after 1 year in that position, I was promoted to elementary supervisor, where I was responsible for going into teachers' classrooms, observing their work, seeing to it that they had the materials that they needed in order to work with the students, giving them whatever kind of supportive assistance that they needed, because we had brand new people coming into the district who had no earthly idea as to, how did I get this started, and you had to be there for them. We ended up taking on the task of being Title I Director, Title I Chapter 1. That's federal money coming into the school district based on the number of students who were categorized as being impoverished, and the school district received money to get extra teaching assistance for those youngsters in teachers and in materials, so we could order things that were needed to supplement what the regular program was doing, hopefully making it better for those students. So with Title I, we had a lot of experiences. We had all kinds of workshops that we had to engage in with and for the teachers. We brought people in to help. We sent teachers to conferences all over the United States. We received the Title I Distinguished Award for having an exemplary program through the Atkins School, where Mrs. Rebecca Morgan was the principal. And in order to receive that award, we had teachers who accompanied us to Florida, where we were honored, and very proud of receiving that honor. In fact, we've been proud of our school district in those past years, because at one time we were a national model school district, and that's something that we need to get back on track with, because it's about using the brains. It's about challenging the students. It's about saying, oh yes, you can. It's about saying that here are the materials, let's use them. If there's something else we need, then we'll go out and get that in order to help you. From that point, we continued to work, and I concluded my services to 10 years in Wilkerson County, 40 years in Macomb, and in 2000, I retired and came home to mow the lawn, trim the hedges, cut the grass, and I looked across the streets one day and I saw what was happening to my neighbor's house who had died. He was a railroad man. And I saw children walking in and out in a very suspicious fashion. And I concluded after some observation that somebody had to be in this building doing something that was illegal, using the children. And so I called the police and I started inquiring as to what was going on, and I let it be known that this was not acceptable for our community and we needed to do better. Eventually the people moved on and the vagrants moved in, and from there I started looking for whoever had purchased the property, because you lose it after 3 years, you don't pay your taxes. So I kept searching and searching and searching. I finally found the last person who had bought it, and it was in deplorable condition then. People had shot through this window, through a wall, because you get that drug stuff and you don't pay, then that's the first thing they do is shoot. So I was able to pay for the property. And then I started looking for somebody to assist us in making the renovations that needed to be made, because it was a mess. I had 4 dump truck loads of refuse hauled out of here with my own personal funds. No, people don't want to help when it comes to. People talk, they criticize, they find fault. Talk is cheap. If you're going to accomplish something, you have to decide, is it worth you making a sacrifice? So I decided to make the sacrifice and get the building. And I had people complaining about, once there was desegregation, the pictures that we used to have in the schools were put away. You couldn't find, there was no identity for us at all. And I said, well, why not pull this together and start letting this be a place where our history could be told. And this is why we ended up with the Black History Gallery that was incorporated in 2004 by the IRS. So we are now 501c3. And that's where we are as today.